My name is Lena Crawford, and at 29 years old, I should have been living the happiest day of my life. The chandeliers of the old hall in Savannah, Georgia glowed a warm gold as guests clapped, raising their glasses when my new husband, Daniel Hayes, and I pressed the silver knife into our wedding cake. The soft notes of a violin drifted in the background, and laughter rippled through the room like sunlight dancing on water. But inside, there was a silence only I could hear. The 3 front row seats marked with ribbons for my parents and younger sister remained empty. My in-laws smiled at me with genuine pride. His cousins teased Daniel about his vows, and his mother dabbed tears of joy from her eyes. Yet the people who raised me, the ones who should have stood by me in this moment, had simply chosen not to come. I felt it most when the crowd shouted, "Kiss! Kiss!" And Daniel leaned down, his hand steady on my back. I kissed him, smiled for the cameras, and tried to ignore the chill that spread in my chest. Then I felt the buzz of my phone hidden in the pocket of my gown. A message flashed across the screen. "We need to talk. Call me now." It was from my mother, Elaine. Beneath it, 36 missed calls stacked like accusations. All from her, my father, and even my sister Maddie. My hand trembled as I slipped the phone away. What could they possibly want after skipping my wedding? Before I tell you what came next, you need to understand something. Families don't wake up one morning and decide to cut their daughter out of her own wedding. That kind of betrayal is built brick by brick, over years of small choices, ignored moments, and wounds that never healed. I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the oldest child in a house where appearances mattered more than love. My parents, Thomas and Elaine Crawford, loved to show the world how perfect we looked. Family portraits in matching outfits, Christmas cards with forced smiles, church on Sundays without fail. Neighbors admired us, thinking we were the picture of Southern grace. But behind those walls, I was invisible. From the moment my younger sister Maddie was born, the spotlight shifted away from me. She was the darling, the golden child. With her honey blonde curls and charming giggle, she could do no wrong. By the time she was 6, she was performing ballet recitals and stealing every ounce of attention. By the time she was 10, she was the girl everyone in our church cooed over. I didn't envy her talent or her beauty. I envied how our parents looked at her. When I was accepted into an advanced science program at school, I came home breathless, clutching the letter like it was my ticket to finally be seen. "Mom, Dad, I got in," I said, waiting for applause. My mother glanced up from hemming Maddie's dance costume and smiled faintly. "That's nice, Lena. Leave it on the table for your father." And that was the end of it. That same week, Maddie came, in second place in a local ballet competition. My parents dressed us up and took us out to a steakhouse, raising a toast to our shining star. I sat in silence, my certificate folded in my purse, wondering why my victories never seemed worth a meal. That wasn't an isolated moment. It was the rhythm of my childhood. My accomplishments, no matter how significant, were brushed aside. Maddie's, no matter how small, were celebrated. When I graduated high school with honors, they missed the ceremony because Maddie had a recital. My mother said softly, "You understand, right? This is important for her future." I nodded, because I'd already learned the truth. In our family, her future always came first. By the time I left for college in Austin, Texas, I had given up on expecting anything different. College in Austin, Texas was the first time I felt like I could breathe. Away from the polished walls of my parents' house and the endless shadow of my sister, I began to figure out who I really was. I studied biomedical engineering, pouring myself into numbers, formulas, and late nights at the lab. For the first time, my effort was met with recognition that mattered. Professors praised my work ethic. Classmates sought me out for study groups. And for once, I wasn't just Maddie's sister. I was Lena. Capable, determined, and smart. Still, old habits die hard. I called home less and less, knowing the conversations would always circle back to Maddie. She's been cast in another production, my mother would gush. Your sister might get a scholarship, my father would add proudly. Meanwhile, when I mentioned being nominated for an academic award, the silence on the other end of the line said enough. I stopped trying to make them care. But life has a way of giving you what you didn't know you needed. During my junior year, I met Daniel Hayes at a friend's birthday dinner. He wasn't flashy, no rehearsed charm, no smug grin. Just a man with steady brown eyes and a laugh that made everyone relax. We sat across from each other, and by the time dessert arrived, I felt something shift. On our third date, I told him about my family. I expected the usual awkward smile, the quick subject change, the "that sucks" response I usually got. Instead, Daniel reached across the table, covered my hand with his, and said quietly, "Lena, that isn't normal. You deserved better than that." It was the first time someone had said it so plainly. For years, I'd convinced myself I was being too sensitive, that maybe I was selfish for wanting more from my parents. But Daniel's words cut through all of it. He wasn't pitying me, he was validating me. And that changed everything. As our relationship deepened, Daniel encouraged me to set boundaries. "You can't make them love you the way you need," he said one evening as we sat on the porch of my apartment, watching the Texas sunset burn orange and gold. "But you can decide how much of yourself you give to them." At his urging, I started therapy with Dr. Aldridge, a calm, gray-haired man who introduced me to a phrase I'd never heard before: emotional neglect. He explained how invisible wounds cut deeper than obvious ones, how constantly being overlooked could shape the way a child grows into an adult. For the first time, the ache inside me had a name. I began to accept my parents for who they were, not who I wished they'd been. I lowered my expectations, not as defeat, but as freedom. If they couldn't show up for me, then I would stop waiting for them to do so. Daniel became my anchor. His family welcomed me without hesitation. His mother, Susan, would call just to check in. His father, Gerald, would send me articles he thought I'd enjoy. And his sister, Emily, became the sisterly bond I'd always craved, but never found with Maddie. "You're part of us now," Susan told me during my second visit to their home in Richmond, Virginia. "And in this family, we celebrate everyone's wins." That night, I cried in the bathroom, overwhelmed by something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Belonging. But as much as I tried to move forward, the past wasn't done with me. And when Daniel asked me to marry him, in the sweetest, most thoughtful proposal I could have imagined, the cracks in my family's facade of indifference split wide open. Because if there's one thing I should have learned by then, it's this: Maddie always found a way to pull the spotlight back to herself. And this time, she wouldn't just steal attention. She would try to steal my entire wedding day. Daniel proposed on our 2-year anniversary, and it was everything I never knew I wanted. He had rented out a small independent theater in Austin, where we'd had our first date. The movie suddenly paused halfway through, replaced by a montage of our photos and little videos set to our favorite song. When the lights came up, he was on one knee, holding out a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "Lena Crawford," he said, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "You are the most brilliant and kind woman I've ever known. Will you marry me?" Through laughter and tears, I whispered yes, and the theater erupted in applause. It was perfect, intimate, thoughtful, so very Daniel. That night, as we toasted with champagne in my apartment, a shadow crept over my joy. I had to call my parents. "They'll be happy for you," Daniel assured me, though I heard the slight hesitation in his voice. He had already seen enough of my family's indifference to know not to expect much. The next day, I dialed my parents' number, my stomach tight as the phone rang. My mother answered on the 4th ring. "Mom," I said, voice shaking. "I have news. Daniel proposed last night. We're engaged." A pause, just a second too long. "Oh, well, that's good. Congratulations," that was it. No squeal of joy, no questions about the proposal, not even a half-hearted offer to celebrate. I pushed on, desperate. "We're thinking of a spring wedding." Maybe 6 months from now. That's quite soon, she replied flatly. Well, keep us updated on the details. Then, without warning, her tone brightened. By the way, Maddie just landed the lead role in a community theater show. Isn't that wonderful? And just like that, my engagement had been reduced to background noise. Still, Daniel and I moved forward. We chose a charming historic venue in Savannah, Georgia, planning an intimate ceremony with about 60 guests. We picked hydrangeas and lilies for the flowers, a small local restaurant to cater, and a photographer whose work captured the kind of candid, joy-filled moments I wanted to remember. Every detail felt right. We mailed invitations, including ones to my parents, Maddie, and a few relatives. Weeks passed with no RSVP. When I called to check, my mother said, "Oh, we got it. We'll try to make it. You know how busy things get." "It's my wedding," I whispered, trying not to sound desperate. "I'd really like you to be there." "We'll do our best." Their indifference stung, but what came next nearly broke me. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was scrolling through Instagram when my thumb froze. A photo filled the screen. Maddie grinning, her left hand raised to show off a diamond ring. The caption read, "He asked, I said yes. #future misses." The comments were full of congratulations. My parents had both chimed in. "So proud of our beautiful girl. Can't wait to celebrate this weekend." This weekend, my heart stopped. I called my mother immediately. "Maddie's engaged?" "Yes, Patrick proposed last weekend. So romantic. He took her to a vineyard in the hills. And what's this about a celebration?" "Oh, just a little engagement party. Saturday night. Just family and close friends." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "Saturday night is my wedding day." Silence. Then my mother's voice, falsely confused. "Is it? I thought yours was the following weekend." "No, you RSVP'd to it." "You knew the date. Well, Maddie's been planning this for a while. Deposits are down. People have arranged to come. Would it be possible for you and Daniel to reschedule?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Reschedule my wedding. Everything's booked. 60 guests are coming. Contracts are signed." She sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "We'll figure something out. Maybe we can stop by your ceremony, then head to Maddie's party. You understand how important this is for her." For the first time in years, my voice rose. "I've been planning this for 6 months. Dad is supposed to walk me down the aisle, and you're telling me you might split your time between my wedding and an engagement party?" Her answer was cold, almost rehearsed. "Family comes first, Lena. Maddie needs us." The irony cut so deep I couldn't breathe. In their eyes, Maddie was family. I was simply optional. The days leading up to the wedding should have been filled with joy. Hair trials, last-minute fittings, laughter with friends. Instead, I felt as if I were sleepwalking through a nightmare. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Maddie plastering her engagement all over social media. Each post tagged with #BigDayComing. But the worst part wasn't her bragging. It was who she managed to pull into her orbit. My best friend since college, Rachel Monroe, had been my maid of honor. She had been there for me through breakups, final stress, and lonely holidays when my family forgot to call. She was the one person I trusted to stand beside me at the altar. So when she texted the night before the wedding, "I'm so sorry, Lena. Something came up. Family emergency. I might be late tomorrow, but I'll definitely be there before the ceremony." I wanted to believe her. But something about her vagueness gnawed at me. Rachel was never vague. That evening, unable to sleep, I scrolled through Instagram. My stomach dropped. There she was, Rachel, leaving a comment under Maddie's newest photo. "You look stunning. Can't wait for tomorrow." My chest tightened. Tomorrow. The same tomorrow as my wedding. Maddie's party. Hands shaking, I switched to Rachel's profile. A story flickered across the screen. A photo of a dress in a boutique fitting room. The caption, "Perfect for tomorrow night." She deleted it almost immediately, but not before I saw. I dialed her number, desperate. It went straight to voicemail. My message came out choked. "Rachel, please tell me you're not skipping my wedding for Maddie's party." Minutes later, her reply came in text. I'm so sorry, Lena. Maddie told me you'd chosen someone else as your maid of honor. She showed me texts. I didn't know what to believe. I thought maybe I could attend both, but it won't work. I should have told you sooner. Please forgive me. The phone slipped from my hand. Rachel, my maid of honor, my closest friend, had chosen my sister over me, just like my parents had. I crawled onto the hotel bed fully dressed, sobbing into the pillow until no sound came out. Everyone I had trusted, everyone who was supposed to love me, had turned away. But life has a cruel way of handing you unexpected lifelines. The next morning, a knock came at my hotel door. I opened it to see Kelsey Ward, an old college roommate I had invited out of nostalgia. She held 2 coffees and a bag of pastries, smiling until she saw my tear-stained face. Whoa! Lena, what's wrong? The question cracked me wide open. I told her everything. My family's betrayal, Maddie's party, Rachel's desertion. When I finished, Kelsey set down the food, grabbed my hands, and said firmly, Then I'll do it. I'll be your maid of honor. Today. Right now. You don't need them. You've got me. I stared at her, stunned. You'd do that? Of course. Friends show up. And I'm not letting you walk through today alone. For the first time in weeks, something inside me shifted. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was hope. Maybe, just maybe, this day could still belong to me and Daniel. But I couldn't know then what waited just a few hours away. A twist that would shatter everything I thought I knew about Maddie, about my family, and about the lies that had stolen my wedding day. The morning of my wedding unfolded like a blur. The makeup artist worked quietly, the hairstylist pinned my veil, and Kelsey moved through the room like she had trained for this role her whole life. She fluffed the gown's lace train, kept my coffee warm, and told silly stories from our college days to make me laugh. For a little while, the ache in my chest dulled. Then came the walk down the aisle. I had always imagined my father, Thomas, beside me, his hand steady on mine, guiding me toward my future. Instead, as the music began, I froze in the small bridal room, staring at the empty doorway. That's when Gerald Hayes, Daniel's father, appeared. He cleared his throat, his eyes gentle. Lena, Daniel told me your father couldn't make it. If you'd like, I would be honored to walk you down the aisle. The tears came before I could stop them. I'd love that. Thank you, he offered his arm. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt what it meant to be chosen. The doors opened. I stepped into the glow of the historic Savannah Hall, my arm looped through Gerald's, my eyes fixed on Daniel waiting at the altar. Gasps rippled through the guests, but I barely heard them. Daniel's face said it all. Awe, love, certainty. The empty seats on my side blurred at the edges of my vision, forgotten in the light of his smile. The ceremony was short but deeply ours. We read our vows, voices trembling, and when Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger, the world narrowed to just the 2 of us. When the officiant declared us husband and wife, the cheers felt louder than any void my family had left behind. At the reception, we swayed to our first dance under strings of twinkling lights. Susan, Daniel's mother, dabbed her eyes while Emily cheered. Later, Gerald returned to the floor, asking for a dance. Every bride deserves a father-daughter moment, he whispered as we moved to the music. My throat tightened. For the first time that day, joy outweighed grief, until the cake. Daniel and I pressed the knife into the frosted tiers, cameras flashing, guests applauding. That's when I felt it. The buzz of my phone against my hip. I tucked it into the hidden pocket of my dress earlier. Curious, I glanced at the screen. 36 missed calls. One text flashing at the top. We need to talk. Call me now. My mother. Daniel noticed my face pale. What is it? I showed him. He frowned. They chose Maddie's party, Lena. Whatever this is, it can wait. Tonight is ours. I wanted to agree. I wanted to shove the phone away and never look back. But something in my chest twisted. A lifetime of craving answers, of hoping my parents would finally choose me. Against my better judgment, I excused myself and stepped into the quiet garden outside the venue. When I called, my mother answered on the first ring. Her voice was frantic. "Lena! Oh, thank God! We've been trying to reach you for hours." "I was busy," I said bitterly. "Getting married." Her words tumbled out in a rush. "It's Maddie." Patrick called off the engagement in the middle of the party. He said he couldn't marry her because she confessed everything she did to you. I gripped the phone, heart hammering. "What are you talking about?" "She lied, Lena. She told us you didn't want us at your wedding. She showed us fake texts, messages you never sent. She said you'd asked her not to come. She even deleted your real voicemails from our phones." My mother's voice cracked. "We believed her. We thought you wanted nothing to do with us." The world tilted beneath me. Maddie hadn't just stolen attention. She had stolen my family from my wedding day with lies. My father's voice cut in, weary and ashamed. "We failed you. We should have called you directly, but we let ourselves believe her, and now Patrick knows the truth." He ended everything right there at the party. I sank onto a stone bench in the garden, the magnitude of it crashing over me. Maddie hadn't just craved the spotlight. She had burned my life to the ground to have it. And for the first time in my life, my parents couldn't pretend they hadn't seen it. By the time I hung up in the garden, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. The truth was out. Maddie's lies, her manipulation, the way she had robbed me of my own family on the one day that should have been mine. When I stepped back into the reception, Daniel caught my eye instantly. His smile faded when he saw my expression. "What happened?" I told him everything in a low voice. The fake texts, the deleted voicemails, the elaborate scheme Maddie had spun. His jaw clenched, but he kept his voice calm for me. "She didn't just hurt you, Lena. She tried to destroy you. That's not jealousy, that's cruelty." I nodded, numb. "My parents want to meet tonight." At the hotel, Daniel squeezed my hand. Then we faced them together. At 11 that night, after the last guest had hugged us goodbye, Daniel and I walked into the hotel lobby. My parents were already there, sitting side by side. They looked older, somehow smaller than I remembered. My mother's eyes were red from crying, my father's hands twisted in his lap. When they saw me, my mother stood as if to embrace me. I held up a hand. "Don't." Her arms dropped. Silence pressed in until my father finally spoke. "Lena, we don't expect forgiveness. Missing your wedding, believing Maddie over you, it's unforgivable. But we need you to know how deeply sorry we are." "Sorry," I said flatly, "doesn't change the fact that you chose her. Again, you believed I'd shut you out of my own wedding without even calling me directly. Why was that so easy for you to believe?" My parents exchanged a look before my father admitted, "Because we knew we'd failed you. We knew we'd favored Maddie for years, overlooked your accomplishments, dismissed your feelings. When she said you didn't want us there, part of us believed we deserved that rejection." The words sliced through me. "So instead of fighting for me, you gave up." Tears slid down my mother's face. "We were cowards." It was easier to believe Maddie's lie than to face what we'd done. Daniel, silent until then, spoke sharply. "You didn't just fail her today. You failed her for decades. And you enabled Maddie every step of the way." My parents nodded, shame heavy on their shoulders. I studied them, really studied them, for the first time not as the parents I'd once wished for, but as flawed people stripped bare by their own guilt. And in that moment, I realized something. I had the power now. "I can't forgive you tonight," I said. "Maybe not ever. But if you're serious about change, then prove it. Therapy, accountability, no more excuses. And Maddie, she needs help. What she did goes beyond rivalry." It was deliberate destruction. My father's voice was hoarse. "We'll do whatever it takes. We've already contacted a therapist. We'll find Maddie and get her help too." We sat in that sterile hotel conference room for over an hour, picking at decades of wounds. No magical reunion came, no sweeping embrace. But something shifted. A door cracked open, not forgiveness, but the possibility of rebuilding from ashes. When Daniel and I finally left, exhausted, he asked gently, "Are you okay?" I thought about it, then answered honestly, "Not yet." But I will be, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the powerless daughter waiting to be chosen. I was a woman drawing the line and forcing them to step across it if they wanted a place in my future. 6 months passed after the wedding. Daniel and I settled into married life in our Savannah apartment, traveling to Portugal for a honeymoon that felt like a dream. Cobblestone streets in Lisbon, golden sunsets over the Algarve coast, and 2 weeks without family shadows. For the first time, I felt weightless, but coming home meant facing reality. True to their word, my parents began therapy with Dr. Brenner, a family counselor. They invited me to join sessions, and though I hesitated, I eventually agreed. Each Thursday evening, we peeled back layers of silence and favoritism, confronting truths none of us had dared speak aloud. Healing wasn't neat. It was jagged, exhausting, but slowly, the walls we had built began to crack. Maddie had disappeared after Patrick ended the engagement. For weeks, she ignored calls. Eventually, my parents coaxed her into therapy of her own. It took 2 months before I agreed to see her. We met at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. She looked smaller, drained of the glow she once carried like armor. She stirred her coffee without drinking it, eyes fixed on the table. "I don't know where to start," she whispered. "Sorry feels pathetic compared to what I did." I leaned back, my voice steady. "Then start with why." Her jaw tightened. After a long pause, she admitted, "Jealousy. But not just of Daniel or your wedding. I've always been jealous of you. You built a real life, Lena. Real friends, real accomplishments. I spent my whole life performing for mom and dad's approval, but it was hollow. And when you had something I couldn't fake, I wanted to ruin it." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I sabotaged you because I thought if I couldn't have happiness, you shouldn't either." I studied her, searching for the sister I'd once tried to love. "You nearly destroyed me, Maddie. On my wedding day, I stood in front of empty seats because of you. That's not just jealousy, that's cruelty." She nodded, broken. "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to be better." I didn't answer right away. Because revenge, I'd realized, wasn't about yelling or slamming doors. Revenge was living in the truth. Revenge was forcing her, and my parents, to face the wreckage they created. So I told her, "You'll never have the power to take from me again. If you want a place in my life, you earn it. Slowly, honestly. Until then, I owe you nothing." Her tears flowed harder, but I didn't waver. For the first time, Maddie sat in silence while I controlled the conversation. That night, as Daniel and I sat on the balcony of our apartment, he asked, "Do you feel like you got justice?" I thought about the empty seats at my wedding, the lies, the pain. Then I thought about Gerald walking me down the aisle, Susan treating me like her daughter, and Emily cheering me on like a true sister. I thought about Kelsey saving the day when Rachel vanished. "Yes," I said slowly, "because the best revenge isn't ruining them back. It's building a life so full of love they can't touch it." Daniel smiled, kissing my temple. "And that's exactly what you're doing." I rested my head against his shoulder, the city lights glowing below us. My family's betrayal had scarred me, but it had also given me clarity. I was no longer the girl begging for scraps of attention. I was the woman who chose her worth and demanded others recognize it too. That was my revenge, and it was more satisfying than anything Maddie could have imagined. On our first anniversary, Daniel and I hosted a small dinner at our apartment. Nothing extravagant, just a few close friends, his parents, and his sister Emily. Kelsey was there too, laughing so hard at one of Gerald's stories, she nearly spilled her wine. For the first time, I felt surrounded by the family I had always longed for. Not bound by blood, but by choice and loyalty. My parents came as well. They were quieter than the rest, cautious, careful, but they were trying. My mother brought a scrapbook she had made, filled with photos she admitted she had once brushed aside. My science awards, my graduation, even a poem I'd written in elementary school. She placed it in my hands and said softly, "I see you now, Lena. I wish I had seen you then. I didn't know if forgiveness would ever come fully, but I nodded. Progress, I'd learned, sometimes looked like small steps. Even Maddie showed up, subdued and still raw. She didn't demand the spotlight this time. She listened, offered quiet congratulations when Daniel tapped his glass for an announcement, and for once, I almost believed she wanted to change. Daniel's announcement? That was the moment my new life truly began. He reached for my hand, eyes sparkling. "We wanted to share some news tonight. Lena and I are expecting. The baby is due in June." The room erupted in joy. Susan cried openly, Gerald clapped Daniel on the back, and Emily nearly knocked over her chair hugging me. For a moment, I froze. Not because I wasn't happy, but because I realized this was the cycle breaker. This child, our child, would never wonder if they mattered. They would never sit at a table, ignored while someone else was toasted. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Daniel and I sat among the mess of empty plates and wine glasses. He touched my stomach, still flat but full of promise. "Do you feel ready?" he asked. I smiled. Certain. More than ready. Because I know exactly what not to do. This child will grow up knowing their worth. They will never doubt my love. That's the revenge. Ending the cycle, I leaned against him, looking out at the quiet Savannah night. My parents' favoritism, Maddie's cruelty, Rachel's betrayal, all of it had scarred me. But it had also carved me into someone stronger. I no longer needed their validation. I had built a life with Daniel that brimmed with love, respect, and truth. A life where my child would thrive without ever feeling invisible. That, I realized, was the ultimate victory. Not Maddie's downfall, not my parents' guilt, but me, rising, healing, and creating a family where no one would ever be made to feel like I once did. Sometimes revenge isn't about breaking others. Sometimes it's about building yourself so strong that nothing, not even the people who once broke you, can touch the life you've created. And that was the life I chose. Years have passed since that day in Savannah when empty seats scarred the happiest moment of my life. Sometimes I still see them in my mind. 3 ribbons tied to chairs that stayed untouched while I said my vows. For a long time, that memory hurt like an open wound. But time, effort, and truth have a way of reshaping scars into something else. Reminders of survival. My parents never fully earned back my trust, but they changed more than I ever thought possible. Therapy humbled them, forced them to see themselves not as victims of Maddie's lies, but as the architects of a childhood where I was invisible. They worked hard to rebuild, not with grand gestures, but with small consistencies. Remembering birthdays, showing up for dinners, asking about my work without turning the conversation back to Maddie. Maddie, for her part, never became my best friend, or even someone I fully let back in. But she learned that her charm couldn't bend the truth anymore. Therapy stripped away the excuses she had lived behind. She apologized more than once, but what mattered wasn't her words, it was her actions. For the first time, she let me stand in the light without trying to steal it. And Rachel, that wound cut the deepest. She tried for months to repair what she had broken, but trust is fragile. I accepted her apology eventually, but the friendship we once had never returned. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean a second chance. It just means choosing peace over bitterness. Now, when I watch my daughter toddle across the living room floor, giggling as Daniel scoops her into his arms, I feel the revenge I once longed for settle into something stronger, peace. She will never question whether she matters. She will never sit in the shadow of favoritism. She will know without doubt that she is loved unconditionally. That is the legacy I chose, not repeating the cycle, but breaking it. My family's betrayal once felt like the end of me. In truth, it was the beginning. The empty seats at my wedding weren't just a loss, they were a turning point. They pushed me to stop waiting for love where it would never come and to build a life overflowing with it instead. And that is the sweetest revenge of all. To be so full of love and strength that those who once broke you become powerless to touch the life you've created. If there's one truth I've carried with me, it's this. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't visible. They come from being unseen, unheard, unloved in the ways that matter most. For years, I thought my worth depended on winning my parents' attention, proving myself against Maddie's spotlight, or keeping friends like Rachel close even when they wavered. I lived in pursuit of recognition that never came. But life has taught me something far more valuable. Worth isn't given, it's claimed. It's in the way Daniel looks at me, not because of what I've achieved, but because of who I am. It's in my daughter's laughter when she runs into my arms, knowing she is safe and adored. It's in the family I've built, the friends who showed up when it mattered, the peace I found by letting go of those who didn't. My revenge was never about Maddie losing her fiancé, or my parents drowning in guilt, or Rachel realizing what she threw away. My revenge was choosing myself. Fully, unapologetically, finally. And that's the truth I want to leave behind. You cannot force people to see you. You cannot beg them to love you. But you can love yourself enough to walk away, enough to build a life so bright it makes their shadows meaningless. The empty seats at my wedding no longer haunt me. Now they remind me of the moment I stopped waiting for anyone else to hand me worth, and took it for myself. And that, in the end, is the most powerful revenge. Not breaking others, but rising so high that their absence doesn't break you.